here because we care about getting victims the help and the support that they need, which is why today I've introduced AB 1623 to provide enhanced privacy protections for victims served by family justice centers. And AB 1623 will encourage more victims to seek help. Family justice centers are one-stop resource centers that have quickly become a best practices model in California and frankly across the nation, and which are now serving in California over 14,000 victims each year. I became involved in supporting the Family Justice Center model as a San Diego City Council member in 2001 when our city attorney, Casey Gwynn, brought it to my attention and to the attention of the City Council. This model really works. By bringing together all of our specialized resources in one location to provide better and more convenient services to victims and, of course, their children. Medical help, advocacy, counseling, law enforcement, and other vital services are available in one place. This approach reduces the number of places that a victim must travel to in order to get help. And it also prevents them from having to tell their story over and over and over again. For a person who's already facing a traumatic experience, this integrated approach can mean the difference. It truly can mean the difference between seeking help or just giving up and accepting the abuse and going home. In 2011, the state legislature adopted legislation to study 4 family justice centers in California, including our own here in San Diego. And one of the goals of the study was to identify barriers or challenges to the effectiveness of our centers. One of the recommendations of that study was that all family justice centers should implement policies to ensure that survivors of abuse do not have to involve the criminal justice system in order to access services, and that no information be shared with law enforcement without the victim's consent. The legislation I've introduced will ensure that the privacy of victims is protected and that a bright line is maintained between services for victims and the criminal justice system. You know, sometimes it's critical that victims of abuse share personal, private information with people who are trying to help them. They may have other problems in their lives. Maybe there's been some criminal activity in the home, or perhaps there's a substance abuse issue. Many survivors are worried about losing their children. Others may be undocumented and fear that their families will be torn apart if they just try to seek help. The most important first step in addressing abuse is to get the victim and any children involved into a safe and healthy situation. And if a victim fears that they themselves might get into trouble by trying to escape an abusive environment, they're not likely to seek help. And that's why the confidentiality provisions that are in AB 1623 are so important. These provisions are also extremely important for children. They are victims even when they aren't direct target of abuse, which was my story growing up. And they depend on the adults in their lives to keep them safe. By encouraging survivors to seek help, this bill helps ensure that children will also escape a damaging environment. Later, after the family's immediate needs have been met, counselors will work with the victims on addressing other challenges and other issues that might exist, but it will always be the victim's choice. AB 1623 will require that these confidentiality standards for all multi-agency domestic violence models in California that include law enforcement will ensure that a victim's information stays private and that they have the final say on how their information is used, no matter where they live in the state. You know, as a kid, and I was talking with someone you're going to hear from shortly, I was not abused as a kid, but my mother was. And my mom never left. The services weren't there for her. So we stayed. And the impact on kids, it's something you will never, ever forget. Never, ever forget. And so it was my personal interest, as well as a responsibility as an elected official, to try to make sure that the services are there. So this is incredibly important. I'm so thrilled to be able to put this legislation forward.